Hi, welcome to the Ambient iPad. Let's make some light music. Yes, you heard that right. We're going to work with light today and not sound. Imaginando has released a new synthesizer, VS Visual Synthesizer. Instead of producing sounds, it uses all the settings to produce different graphics and different types of light. Imaginando was kind enough to send me a free copy, and so we're going to take a look at that today and see what we can do with it. So I have Visual Synthesizer works as both a standalone app and also as a AUV3. Right now I've got it in standalone mode, and I'll just walk through some of the features here, and then we'll see if we can get it going in apeMatrix, Cubasis. I already know it doesn't show up in GarageBand. It's really not a surprise. There's a lot of apps that you can't use within GarageBand, but we'll take a look at what it looks like in apeMatrix and Cubasis. So as you can see here, there's a bit of a light show going on, and I do want to emphasize that this is a visual synthesizer. This isn't just a visualizer reacting to the music, although it can react to MIDI, it can also react to audio. Instead, this has settings just like any other synth would, but instead of producing sounds, it produces light. And of course, you have a bunch of different preset choices of different kinds of visuals, and there's a bunch of layers, and there's a lot of different things you can do with this. Imaginando has put some demo pieces on here so you can kind of watch how it works in real time. So, you know what, let's pick Mellow Techno. Turn that down a little for myself. Nice tune here. All right, let's go back. And we're at a good tempo. All right, how do we get out of here? So as you can see, right now it just looks like a visualizer reacting to the different sounds, but it's a lot more complex than that. I do want to, let me just run through a few so you can see here. So the music's not changing, but the different graphics and light that it's producing is. All right, let's stick with Black Hole. We'll have this on here while we walk through. I'll turn down the music so it'll just be going in the background. All right. So why don't we start with the user interface here? I'll just quickly run through everything along the top here. There is a MIDI learn, so you can assign any parameters within the visual synthesizer to a MIDI controller. And then you would do the mapping. Clock source, where does it get its tempo from? Right now it's on internal because we're using one of the demo pieces. When you're using it in a DAW or other type of app where VS is hosted, it will take its clock, its master clock from that app. Then, as you know, there's demos you can choose from. You can change the tempo of any demo song and change the tempo when you're in standalone mode here. And then, as you saw, there's a lot of different presets that you can start with. And then on the right side here, we have, after you do some changes, you can save your patch. You can revert to the last saved instance, and you can kind of quickly scroll through patches as well. There's also help built on here, which gives you some tool tips. You see up in the upper left that question mark. There's a frame rate counter, so if you need to achieve a certain frame rate, you can make sure that you're doing that. There's an undo down here on the left, also a redo. And then where it's labeled 1 through 8 and then a B, that's the layer manager. So as I mentioned before, you can have up to 8 layers of light as opposed to 8 layers of sound going on here, and you can control each of those layers. And we'll get more into that because there's a lot of controls here. The line underneath is the layer controls, and then the graphics along the bottom, that's really where you do modulation. So LFOs, envelope generators, etc. That would then impact how the graphic or the light is displayed. You can also expand this window so you can make it the full screen. I haven't seen this on the iOS app, but there also is sending the graphic to a separate monitor. I'm assuming that that's part of the desktop app. This application is available both on iOS, a mobile app, and a desktop app. Obviously, we're using the iPad OS app here. All right, let's take a little look, a little more deeper look into the layer manager. This allows you to select different layers. You can load materials, which is graphical elements. So if I double click on here, you can kind of change what the overlay element is here. There's the concept of an alpha layer and then subsequent layers. So you can pick different overlays and then manipulate those. So you see we've got 2 layers going. Let's go with 3. Let's get something different. So as you can see, really change the perception and the look and feel of the graphical elements. So if you click and hold a layer, I was double clicking, but you click and hold, you have some options there. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time going into a lot of this. You can go to the Imaginando site. I'll have a link down below to the manual. It really gives you a good overview of all the different things you can play with here. But you can put photos, you can reset the background image, you can have video, so there's a lot of capabilities for making your own visuals. So let's change the color here so you can see what's going on. It won't work for this layer because there we go. So let's just get everything to red here and see if that makes it. There we go. Okay. So some user error, obviously, but you can change the color of any different elements. And as I mentioned before, you really have a long list of different blend modes. And what this does is it alters how the layers are rendered. It changes the way the layers interact based on the color information from the layers. Then, if you double click, whoops, let's get out of the color. Double click on that. This is the material browser. So essentially the different layers are called materials. So you can, as I showed before, we can keep changing all the different layers, different materials. So you really have a lot of different ways to tweak the light / sound. So if I say the word sound, I really mean light. Let's start looking at the layer controls here. This will turn a layer on and off. So right now the layer's on, we can turn it off. We can turn that layer off. So now we just have one layer. Let's add them all back in here. So alpha controls the transparency of black. So as we raise it, only certain stuff will be displayed and the rest of the screen will be black. Brightness controls the brightness of the layer component. You can turn that up, you can turn that down. You can control the speed of a layer material. It can be positive, it can be negative. You can also control the XY axis. So if you can see here, moving to the side, put it back in the center or close enough, and this we can move it up and we can move it down. The moving up and down isn't as evident to me as the X-axis one is. Some of these capabilities are only available on different materials or different layers, so I'll be completely honest, I don't know what all of these features do right now. If you're using MIDI information to trigger the visuals, you can specify the MIDI channel that it'll use. Right next to here, we can change the channel. You can, again, this is a synthesizer, but it's producing light instead of sound, so you can kind of glide. It's kind of like portamento. Obviously, some of these features are going to be a little more viewable depending on what the graphics is and how many layers there are. So while I'm tweaking some of these, some changes are evident to me, others are not. So let's take a look at the modulation sources. So you have an LFO here on the left. You can change its waveform. If you can notice the changes here in the way that the images are modulating, for lack of a better term. You can change the rate here to make it more noticeable. So I'm kind of seeing some different changes with these waves here. It's subtle, but still gives you a lot of control, particularly the type of music that you may be feeding into it. You really get a great level of control in the way that the movement is happening among the different layers. And just like any LFO, you can sync the speed of the LFO to different tempos. So see the change here. Again, subtle, at least with this image. There's also an envelope generator, just like with sound. Let's see what happens if we raise the attack, lower the release. This probably isn't the best. Let's try this. Okay, this I can see. While it's following the tempo, the attack and release are impacting the undulation, for lack of a better term, of the visuals. And actually there's two independent ones here, so you can set those any way you like. Let's go back to the LFO in combination with the envelope generator. I am noticing the differences in the way that the layers interact. So it's really deep. I mean, again, this isn't just your, hey, let's attach a visualization app to your music. You really, if you view it from the perspective of this is a synth with oscillators, with LFOs, with envelopes, but the output is not sound, it's light. So you could say, oh, well, there's a lot of complexity in the way you can tweak a patch, just like you could on a synth. Some synths have just a few parameters to tweak, and other synths have lots of parameters. And it's all depending on how you want to use it. Grab a preset and go from there and just experiment around with it. There's also over here on the bottom right audio modulators. So this lets you use input audio as a modulation source as opposed to the LFO. So there's a gate, there's a spectrum, which is like gate mode, but you divide the audio into different frequency bands. Maybe I'll do a future video where we do some external audio. Right now I'm not going to set that up, but the capability is there. In addition, there's a modulation matrix, just like you would have on a synthesizer that produces sounds. This allows you to assign modulation sources to specific layer parameters. So you get to that by clicking the slider icon, which is to the right of the layer management bar here. And the destinations are hue, saturation, and the alpha layer. And as you can see, you have multiple LFOs and envelope generators, as well as audio modulation sources. Whoops, just hit something there. But for instance, if we go and let's lower the brightness, and this will trigger off the first LFO we've got going. As you can see, it's getting slightly darker over time. It's a slow rate, and then it'll come back up. So again, no different than a synthesizer, re-triggered at the end. No different than a synthesizer that also has a modulation matrix. In this case, though, instead of sound being impacted, it's light. So there's a lot of stuff here too. You know what? We all get bored with sound and we like quiet sometimes. So turn the volume down and just play with the light. All right, so we've looked at the VS Visual Synthesizer in standalone mode. Let's bring it into apeMatrix and see what happens there. Now we're going to look at the Visual Synthesizer in apeMatrix. I've got a track that I had already created in the past just for the sake of time. Let's just turn that on. Get the volume up a little here. And let's just add in Visual Synth. All right, add in VS here, connect and show. So we've got the default patch going. So first off, you can see that it's using apeMatrix as the clock source. The demo bit is enabled. Tempo is grayed out because we're using the tempo in apeMatrix. And you have all the same capabilities that you did before, even though you know, the representation is smaller. You can get rid of everything but the visualization. But again, it is playing within the apeMatrix environment, so it will not take up the whole screen. All right, so just pick one, black hole. So it's feeding off the sound is triggering the different parameters within this patch. Of course, I can also tweak it. I can turn the brightness down. Can increase the speed. I want to change the axes a little just to make it different. Speed's a little. Let's turn the speed down. So you do get, a lot of capabilities over the different layers. And this patch has 3 layers in there, and then of course the background, which not sure why I'm not seeing that, but I'm sure it's a user error. Let's just pick another, just anything here. So as you can see, there's a lot of different this is a multi-layered materials within the visualization here, but it's way different than the previous one. So you do get a lot of different categories of look and feel. And I have to be honest, I've gone through most of the presets, and I'm really not doing much tweaking because it's cool. I mean, it's cool right out of the box. It's different and it's cool. Let's take a look at Cubasis now. Open up Cubasis. I just have a quick patch here. Turn that up. This is just something I put together quickly with Ripplemmaker and Ruismaker. And we would just add it as a VS. I already have it in here. I'll just show. And there it is if I wanted to add 2, but we've already got 1, so let's take a look at it here. Let's move this up. Don't need that. So again, plays nice in here. Let me pick a different. I don't know. Does it matter? Spiral the Dragon. There we go. I do like the spirals. So as you can see, this is going against the music. Again, we can pick a layer, which I think is the purplish layer, or one of actually. Can increase the speed of that layer. Let me show what zoom is doing. Change the axis. Oh, there you can see it moving to the left and right. Maybe down a little. So really, if you want to get in the mood of working with light versus sound, so in this case we're using MIDI data. I showed you MIDI data with apeMatrix, MIDI data with Cubasis, and then as a standalone, you can feed external audio into it, as well as use the demo songs to just experiment and play around. I actually find the demo songs are good if you want to create some patches, like in quotes, light patches from scratch. Change the tempo and use one of the demo songs as kind of the musical guide, as it were. And the way that I'm going to use this is create a bunch of patches by tempo ranges. So things that I could use between 80 and 90, 90 and 100, 100 and 110, etc. And then a library of that, and then I would just pull some out, tweak the tempo as needed, or it would use the master clock of either Cubasis or apeMatrix to define the speed and other aspects that rely on tempo. But the good thing is you don't have to feed it audio. You don't have to feed it. You don't have to feed it MIDI data. You can just use this as a. I found using a small, low tempo, it's very relaxing to kind of play around with the different colors, the different types of geometrical elements, as well as then get into a synth mode of playing around with the modulation instances and capabilities that it has. I'll keep this track going while I give some final thoughts, and you can see VS doing its thing in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. I give this app 2 thumbs up. It's not only unique, it's a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun to use traditional synth parameters like LFOs and envelope generators in order to have the output be not sound, but different variations of light and graphics and images. You have a lot of capabilities in that department with this app, but you can use it in many ways. As a standalone app, with the internal demo sounds or triggered by external sounds. You saw I used it in a DAW, Cubasis in this case, and it worked great in that. I couldn't get it to work in GarageBand, but I'm not going to ding the app for that because there's a lot of apps that don't work in GarageBand. And we used it in apeMatrix as well, so there's a lot of flexibility here. For myself, I've often thought of using visuals and other graphical elements in some of the completed tracks that I do out of the live jams. But I've tried some of the visualization apps and they haven't really worked out too well. This app, VS, really looks like it has a lot more interesting capabilities to be able to do that, instead of just having the camera focus on myself or the keyboard or screen recording. So I'm looking forward to doing some experiments with that too. So I recommend this. Give it a try. I mean, it's a lot of fun. That's really the bottom line. And I find it relaxing after working in some of the applications, the synths, the effects. Some of the times it gets very frustrating, and in those moments I've actually just called up VS by itself, not as an AU3, and just played around with it, brought in some external audio, and it's just a lot of fun. So give it a try. If you have any questions, please leave those in the comments, and I'd love to hear what you think of this app if you purchase it and if you've used it. So thanks again for watching. In particular, thanks for listening, and good luck with your own music.